Start film in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the commentary track for 1995's Ghost in the Shell, based on the 1989 manga of the same name. The film, as well as the manga series, of course, is based in the not too distant future now of 2029. As we'll see throughout the film, I don't think most of the technology we will see will exist in 8 years from now. I could be wrong, and it would be amazing if so, because who doesn't want to become a cyborg? I mean, really, having technological advancements in body parts, that would be amazing. Now, the version I am watching is the 4K release, which means no CGI enhancements like in the 2008 2.0 release. So this is pure hand-drawn animation from what I understand, of course. The Ghost in the Shell franchise is very near and dear to me because the second film was the first Japanese film, audio-wise, that I ever saw. So, the Ghost in the Shell franchise in general, I am a huge fan of it. This movie is quite good. You're in for a real treat here, as we will see. Of course, you can either watch this in English or Japanese. I usually watch it in Japanese just because it feels more authentic, because at the time of this film's release there wasn't really any English dubs at the time. As a matter of fact, when I rented the second film, and this is the last time I will mention the second film until I eventually do a track on the second film, there was no English dub for it, so it was purely in Japanese. So I particularly enjoy this film in Japanese. Of course, the film is quite short at only 84 minutes, but it is quite the thrill ride throughout. It's very quick paced and well paced for that matter. So here we have what looks to be some sort of bust happening as we see a lot of police entering the building. And of course, we just saw the major jump off a building as well. And here we have these bodyguards setting up for what looks to be quite the firefight. And here we have the bust. Diplomatic immunity. Who are you kidding, sir? There is no diplomatic immunity. Oh dear, kidnapping charges. No good. No good here. This is probably the first time I've actually watched this film in English, so should be interesting. So far, it's okay. Uh, Still prefer the Japanese audio at this point. Oh dear. And of course, the major, she plays by no rules. And of course, the camouflage. Really nice effect there. Yes, thermo camouflage, just to screw with you. Again, we follow Section 9's sort of detective work throughout this film. And of course, we have this nice, beautiful sort of opening credit sequence where we see sort of the cyborg inner workings, which is really nice as we see sort of the cyborg being put together and seeing how it enhances the human body rather than just fully being sort of this android, sort of just machinery. You can still see that there is some humanity left in the body, as this is often a question throughout the film on whether or not they are actually human. or if they're just machines to be used by the government. Not a huge, heavy theme in this film, but it is certainly a theme throughout. The music is absolutely beautiful as well throughout the film. There are a lot of positives from the animation to the sound design to the voice cast. They really did a good job with this film. It's hard not to appreciate. Of course, anime is not for everyone, so I can understand that some people are a little hung up on the film. And that's perfectly fine. Everybody has their tastes. Of course, I wouldn't recommend this film for children. Again, we did see a gore scene not that long ago. And of course, the widely debated on what colors the Major's hair. Of course, we know that it's purple, but some media doesn't quite have purple. This one kind of has more of a darker black coloration of the hair, but we all know that it's purple, especially if you've seen the anime from 2002 to 2004, the first season standalone complex, and the second season second gig. And I prefer second gig over SAC. Of course, SAC was my first exposure to Ghost in the Shell, but the movies are just, there's something so great about the movies that it's so much better. I would recommend starting with the movies over the animes. Of course, there was the 2017 live action film, which I wouldn't recommend that one either. I would definitely recommend the anime and the movies over the live action movie. And here we have the Major waking up. And clearly there's some showing of humanity here, as even though she is a cyborg, she still has this need to sleep rather than just be awake at all times. There will be another scene in the film that kind of shows the benefits of being a cyborg over being a human, and quite sort of an interesting sort of, well, as a cyborg, I get to do this rather than having to not do this thing. That kind of shows the benefits. But again, I won't spoil that scene for you at this point. It will be coming up later on in the film. And of course, one thing that I kind of like about the credits is you get sort of this sequence of data before we see the names of sort of the director and production crew, which was kind of a nice touch. So here we have Section 9's leader, or head of Section 9, with the head of Section 6. One thing that I can appreciate about the English dub is that they have most of the cast from the original, well, the original anime. I shouldn't say original anime because this is the original Ghost in the Shell property when it comes to animation, but the two series, SAC and Second Gig, they have most of the cast there. I don't know when the English dub for this film was produced. Could have been produced in the early 2000s. I'm not sure, because up until this year, I didn't even know this, or up until the end of 2020, sorry, I didn't even know this film had an English dub. So it could have been mid 2000s when most of the cast was still there, or it could have been very recent and they brought everyone back. But I'm not 100% sure on that. There's just so many good scenes in this movie. It's simply fantastic, and I'm so glad that with the 4K release, they decided to go with the original animation rather than the CGI enhancements because it really shows off how good the animation is. Completely just perfect. And here we find out about the Puppet Master and sort of trying to find him, as there seems to be some cyborg manipulation here. I'm pretty sure that this film was somewhat later dubbed because I believe this is a different actress for the Major, but it sounds like everybody else came back for it. It's just the Major that is different, which is rather unfortunate. But you take what you can get, of course. So here we start to see some strange brain patterns and possibly some hints. And then we start to get sort of the background of the Puppet Master, that he seems to be sort of this amazing hacker, and they're really trying to find where he is. So he seems to be quite this mastermind, as we found out that he's been hacking stock markets, gaining illegal information, and all these things. And he seems to be public enemy number one. So they are really taking this seriously. This is. I wouldn't say that this film is better than Akira, but I would say that the animation style, the coloring really will reflect sort of this steampunk environment, or not steampunk, my apologies, cyberpunk environment, and it's just fantastic. I can't praise this movie enough for it. The colors really sort of speak to a cyberpunk. It definitely, like, the dreariness of the colors. It's just really, really enticing for a visual style for cyberpunk. Whereas Akira definitely pops a lot more. And I'm sorry for bringing up so many different movies and so many different programs instead of just talking about the movies, but I feel like it's important to bring up these comparisons when talking about this film, because there is a definite charm for how this film looks in comparison to these other forms of media. My apologies again. And here we see these two garbage men who may have something to do with sort of the events. There seems to be some anger as they're getting late, and some things might be going on that just aren't what they seem. So here we see that there's some drama with this character, as he thinks his wife is cheating on him and sort of wanting to stop things and just flat, and it seems kind of odd for him, so he really wants to know what's happening, so he's sort of causing issues with his work to find these things out. And here we have Bato, and they seem to be just missing it. One thing that I also like about these cyberpunk series that take place in the future is there isn't a lot of futuristic things. That's one thing that I can appreciate with cyberpunk, is that it's not like we have these fancy vehicles with flying cars and things, but there are some technological advances, like being able to drive without using the wheel. But also, you have this option of still driving traditionally, if you will. Something that we are sort of just getting into here in 2021. So here we have the Major sort of hooking into it, and then also having this ability to take control of the truck that she's currently in. And also having a much more advanced version of Google Maps. So there you go. She's taking control of this garbage truck and doesn't even need to use access of the wheel. And here we go. The chase begins. Like I said, there's a lot of action in this film, and it's very fast paced. So the pacing is very well. We had somewhat of a slow to medium speed start, and now we're really gonna hit it, and it's just gonna take like this nice pace. I really do enjoy the pacing, and again, it isn't a very long film, so it's very I can't think of the word off the top of my head. And had he looked at the photo, he would have realized that something was up. And now we see that things aren't exactly what they see. And now he realizes that he might be in a bit of trouble and it wasn't exactly what he wanted to deal with today when doing a simple garbage route. This chase scene is pretty standard for a chase scene, but there are some fun little scenes, as of course they are in garbage trucks. And of course, they're not taking any chances, as it looks like they're using military grade weapons. And then we have our friend here. He's definitely not taking things lightly. Yes, they do know, but also they're right behind you. And like I said, he's not taking any chances as he doesn't care who he kills or hurts, as he's willing to even just sacrifice the guy who he helped essentially, or who's been helping him. And of course, he also has the camouflage that we saw earlier in the film. Yes, we find out that he's using hardcore ammo, gun that won't be able to handle it. But again, he doesn't seem to care. He just wants to get away. So now there's sort of this split up chase. Yes, and the garbage men, they're not off the hook. And of course, some rooftop action. Very well done. And of course, what would a chase scene be without some human casualties in a human market, right? Gotta distract the police somehow, right? Now, Bato, of course, has cybernetic eyes, so he might have an advantage against our thermal optic friend. Though maybe not. course, with all that noise, it might be a little hard. But wait, we see that he might be able to see some things that the average eye can't. And like I said, what's a chase scene without some humans in the way? So here we have no casualties, surprisingly, as you think they would have tried to at least cause some casualties. Nice use of watermelons there to try to disrupt the camouflage. But we see that it might not have worked to the best. But we definitely see that water itself definitely works. And then coming up is a really nice scene. I rather enjoy it as you just sort of get this silence and sort of desolation as he's trying to get away, but we know that the major's on his tail and that his gun doesn't quite have enough bullets or the endurance. And then we see the plane just going overhead. It's just a really nice scene, I find, as he's just running, and it almost turns sort of horror-esque for him as the major's sort of stalking him at this point, almost like a predator. And he thinks he's finally gotten away, but that is not the case, as we hear the major's footsteps. She taunts her victim. And then he thinks he's going to win a knife fight. It's unknown whether he's completely cybernetic or if he just has some sort of communication. Oh, wait, here we sort of see. I believe he gets his arm ripped off, if I remember correctly. But I could be wrong. Nope, no arm rip. My apologies. And here we find out that he really screwed up his gun. And then he realizes that his brain might have been hacked. And the slow realization from the character. And then in come the helicopters. So now we're starting to see sort of the puppet master's sort of abilities here and sort of this hacking organization. Ah, yes. A bigwig. He didn't look 28, Bato, but okay, he's 28, I guess. He looked about 40 in my opinion. $100,000's no small fee. So while we got all this information during this recording, it almost takes away from this scene and through this organization, but they're going to bust these gentlemen in a few seconds, so it doesn't really matter. And the poor garbage collector has also been hacked, as we're about to find out. And then we find out that the puppet is here as well. So the puppet master is really sort of showing his cards at this point. And this poor gentleman is about to receive the shock of a lifetime. He has no wife, he has no children. We are about to see the photo. Yes, and then we find out that there's nothing in the photo and it was all in his mind. And that he has no wife. And now that he realizes it, he's just breaking down. And then we see the photo. It's just a photo of him. And he has to live with this fact for the rest of his life, as he doesn't know who he is. It rather is unfortunate that there's nothing that can be done. Again, this movie deals with some heavy subjects, which is something nice about it when it comes to sort of cyberpunk environments and sort of this question of, are people who have cybernetic enhancements human or not? And this is the scene that I was referring to earlier when the film started, and it sort of continues that question, if you will, as we see the Major is diving something that could be deemed dangerous for cyborgs. And again, another really beautiful shot. I enjoy it as she's coming up to the surface. And we just see this orange sky, which is beautiful. Again, the colors are very good for this film. I highly recommend it. And of course, if you have the 4K version, got some really nice Dolby Vision as well. And she's just chilling with Bato. And then we sort of get this concept that cyborgs can die. They're not immortal. There is this possibility of death rather than sort of this immortality and not having fears like humans do. That they are still human, but at the same time, there are these advancements, such as being able to drink and not have to worry about getting drunk. And as we see that the Major speaks about feeling these fears and having the sensation of feeling cold. They're not just these cold machines that have no sensation. They have the same sensations as humans do, such as being able to feel wet, cold, warm, etc. And then there's the question of how much of you is original rather than artificial. And then the sort of man will continue and continue until they reach technological perfection. If they have the option to achieve that, they will go for it. So there's sort of this question about, has mankind gone too far, or have they not reached that point yet? So they both still realize that they do still have humanity, but they know that they're about to reach that pinnacle where there's no turning back. And then the major discusses how far she is willing to go. And then they start to hear this voice, and they aren't sure where it's coming from. They're not sure where it's coming from. But we will find out later where it came from. And then just this still shot, and the music comes in as we see the plane once again. And you just see sort of this sort of just everyday life shot, and just people sort of going about their day. And that even though with all these technological advancements, not everything is this high tech, superhuman, super prosperous like thing. There are just people just trying to go about their day, just continuing working, and not everybody's sort of super powered. And there we see the major just kind of looking down and just also going about her business, trying to figure out sort of what's going on in the world, if you will, or trying to find a sort of purpose, I would guess, sort of answers. And also, of course, trying to find the puppet master, and just, again, just simple scenes like this where we just see, like, not much different from today, really, where people are just trying to get by. And of course, we have the sad dog. Poor sad puppy. And here we see the rain start to fall. And sort of this rundown hotel. There's a lot of rundown buildings in this film. And sort of just ordinary life with cars going by, people walking. And I think that's a thing in Ghost in the Shell where it's like, for a lot of the time, nothing's truly different. Yes, we saw sort of the cybernetic enhancements and what they can do with the major jumping and falling and being able to break arms and things like that. But we also see sort of this ordinary lifestyle that isn't much different from today's world. To kind of show that there's still just regular humanity, and that while technology advances, humanity sort of stays the same. At least that's my interpretation. And here we see someone just standing in the road. We're not 100% sure what they're doing, but we soon find out that they were cybernetic. And here we have the Major walking into the scene. They're trying to find out exactly why this cybernetic being just kind of sat in the middle of the road. And it's kind of fixated on the Major at the moment. And it looks like the Chief is a little pissed off. And here we find out sort of the backstory of what they know. Oh dear. Operating by itself. So they're thinking it's a hacker here, which could mean our good friend Puppet Master was involved. And then we found out that there's no human activity, so it's just a cybernetic body. It is 100% possibly an android. But they did find a ghost inside, so it's hard to say. And the doctor seems rather annoyed as well. And then there's the question of the soul, on whether just dolls can have souls because there is no humanity left. And so there's this question of souls even in cyborgs. And then we sort of realize that most of the team has some sort of cybernetic enhancement, but whereas the Major is almost 100% cyborg. And we're going to see some cool as I screw up talking there. We're going to see some cool cybernetic things shortly, which are rather super enjoyable, in my opinion. And here we have the Major saying, I'm going in and I will find out what the hell is going on with this body. And here's the chief saying, listen, I got nothing to worry about. These people go through cybernet, like, through psychological evaluations. It's fine to have people poking around in your brain. So there's also that kind of question of the morality of people just sort of poking around. There begins sort of this, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of this sabotage between sectors, which we will see. Wonder if he actually heard that, as the door was pretty much shut by the time he finished his sentence. So I'm not 100% sure if the word got through. And then sort of paranoia sets in, and sort of the question of, are they actually alive or are they just machines? Again, a theme that's throughout the film on whether they're humans or machines. Again, a lot of sort of philosophical themes in the film, and it kind of gets you thinking. And that can be enjoyable for some or not enjoyable for others. Of course, this is a film where you can also just turn your brain off as well. But I do like that it also gets you thinking. And then you get this sort of sabotage thing, as it's all sort of a mystery. And then sort of some detective work going on, as he starts to realize that maybe some thermal camouflage was in effect. Because the door seems to be staying open a little bit too long. So yes, we find out that Togasa, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I apologize if I mispronounce that. We find he sort of has these extra intuitions because he's not cybernetic at all. But somehow, but has, communication implants, but he's mostly human. So he has perhaps more these human instincts that maybe the rest of Section 9 wouldn't think of. So here we see that sort of sabotage and sort of cover ups might be in effect. all is not what it seems. And here we have sort of the possible introduction, a certain somebody, but I won't say who. And again, one of the coolest cyborg scenes ever is when his hands just sort of split open and you just see all these sort of digits pop out. Yes, they found out that the puppet master is in fact in their presence. And then we sort of get this extra sort of theme in the beginning about whether things are human or inhuman, or if cyborgs are just machines or not machines. If they if they indeed have souls or not. Again, one of the coolest things that will happen a lot from the film through on out is the multiple digits coming out of the hands. It's a little creepy, but it's so cool. And then he really makes his presence known. And now we sort of get the Puppet Master's backstory. And again, we get that theme of whether or not machines have souls or free will and deserve sort of this respect and sort of the same rights as humans when they achieve sort of this free will, as he explains. And sort of the question of, are humans really these existence and sort of free will, and why should humans get this and not machines when sort of they have the same cognitive thought, if you will? Like, there's all these questions on whether artificial intelligence deserves rights, or if these entities deserve rights like humans do. And then sort of this inside job begins. But we later find out that it's a very inside job, and eventually we will find that out. My apologies for a bit of a spoiler. Although we sort of found that out when Togusa sort of revealed all this sort of scanning of the pressure sensors and whatnot that it was in fact an inside job. And now we're sort of reaching the climax. And so now they find this hunt as we go through the second car chase of the film. And the chief sort of realizes that he's not 100% being honest here. And yes, so Section 6 is in trouble should everything go off perfectly. So they're going to discover exactly what's going on. And of course, there was no issues with Section 6, but perhaps maybe the puppet master knows something that they don't want out. So now they're definitely working on catching Section 6 and stopping all possible routes of escape. Some cool lighting effects. And here we have Section 6 talking about the espionage and the sort of sabotage of Section 9. And it seems like the doctor knows something that perhaps he wishes to stop or to talk with the major. And we see the major currently reflecting on some things as the music kicks in, and she possibly knows that this could be her final sort of mission. But of course, we are unsure at this point. We get some nice city shots as we see members of Section 9 just driving through the city, tracking cars. Again, I really appreciate the shots of the city as the police are sort of setting up these roadblocks to catch the agents that have sort of kidnapped the puppet master as they're trying to get as much information. And there we get the nice shot of the appendages just coming out to type as fast as possible. Again, as I said in the beginning of the film, it takes place 8 years um, in the future from now. And there are some things that might be possible in 8 years, but again, it's really hard to say. One of those things, in my opinion, is probably the multiple appendages, but it's really hard to tell. Um, but we will see. Again, It's hard to say what's going to happen in 8 years, but possibly more. And here we start to see some backstory on Dr. Willis. And then we start to find out sort of the development of the puppet master and sort of some things back at the beginning of the film that weren't really answered. And we start to get more and more clues as we piece the puzzle together. It's exactly what is going on and sort of solving the mystery at hand. And how Section 6 just kind of wanted their property back before it sort of revealed all of their secrets. Little did they know that this is all about to backfire right in their face as they picked a fight with the wrong section. And to keep digging in for more data, seeing exactly how much they can find. Again, it's a very nice crime film as well. So the Major's going after the sedan, and Bato's going after the other car. Get another nice shot of the secretaries with all their appendages. I imagine it'd be great typing with all those. Though I imagine if they were to make a mistake, that'd be hell to correct. So here we have Bato coming up on these two gentlemen in the black car. And it's not 100% known which section these police are a part of, as it's never stated. As I'm pretty sure Section 9 is just the crew that we've been following throughout the film and nobody extra. And that guy's seen way better days, as he's just been exploded, and Bato comes in to solve the problem of the other gentleman. So, looks like the Major's going to deal with our actual problem. And Bato is off to go meet the Major at the airport. At least I believe it's the airport. I'm pretty sure that that's where they were headed. I could be wrong and just misinterpreted that on every viewing I've had. Okay, it's not the airport. It's actually an abandoned place. My apologies for that misinformation and also mistake. I apologize. So just this abandoned building, which is fitting because that way there's no interference and would make it easy for Section 6 to take back their stuff. And here we have the Major going in. And sort of again, that sort of advantage of having cybernetic parts, being able to open that rather heavy, I don't know what you would call that, sort of window hatch, I suppose, roof hatch. And there's the white sedan. But what's that above it? Looks like she has to deal with a tank. And sort of to break the camouflage, the glass falling on it. So now you can see that she has to fight a tank. So now she's going on somewhat of a suicide mission at this point, as she's going to fight a tank. And Bato is realizing the urgency of having to get his ass there as fast as possible. So here we go. The final battle is about to begin. The Major versus a tank. Who will win? I like that the tank gives her enough time to prepare. You think it wouldn't do that, but what have you. Well, that car has seen better days, that's for sure. So it looks like she's using some high impact rounds, which doesn't seem to affect the tank that much. It seems like one of its cannons is out of commission at this point, so it doesn't seem invincible, but it's definitely more than one person can handle. But to be honest, the fact that the Major has put up this much of a fight is quite impressive. And now sort of the rain coming in as sort of like this depressing sort of dread sets in. It's kind of what the rain shows. And then we start getting this information that 3 choppers are heading in her direction. So time is not on her side. Also, I'm rather impressed with how much ammo this thing has. Although, with it only having one gun at this point, I suppose that all the ammo that was in the other sort of barrel could get transferred to the other one. And now the Major is realizing that time is kind of definitely not on her side and that she's almost out of time. And then she starts to rely on her camouflage. I'm not sure what use camouflage is when you're running in water. And now she has this advantage as the tank can't fire. And then we see the disadvantage, if you will, of cybernetics, as they can only go so far, as her arm starts to rip, as does her leg. And just as it looks like her head is about to be crushed into 1,000 pieces, sort of savior appears with a big ass gun. A gun that can definitely handle a tank. Also, I'm not sure where that blood came from, as it didn't look like it was coming from the Major, so perhaps maybe either body parts bled all over the machine, or the machines can bleed, which is rather interesting. I personally take it as the tank bled after it was destroyed. And here we see our good friend, the Puppet Master. Again, it's not 100% sure why they want to destroy the Major, but that's what they want to do, and it's quite possibly because they know that she can end Section 6, so they want to make sure that they can live to see another day. And here we kind of see just how far the friendship is willing to go between these two. There's definitely that sense of camaraderie, or what's the word I'm looking for? Camaraderie between the two, and it shows that they have been through a lot, that they're willing to do anything for the other. And here we find out exactly what Project 2501, aka the Puppet Master, was exactly for, which was espionage. So he was specifically built for this. And he wasn't even initially a cyborg or a ghost. He was just a program that was created that eventually evolved to the point where it sort of uh, became sentient and more advanced than his creators even could see him going. And then we find out that he was looking for the Major the entire time. And again, we find out that he wanted to escape of Section 6. And he now brings the proposition of them joining into one cognitive being. And it sort of brings this notion of the soul. What happens at this point if they were to merge and become one? And that he needs the Major to become whole, if you will. And then we sort of get the humans just go for survival. And then he brings the proposition of them merging. And then you find out that there's nothing for them to lose. and that Bato was going to pull them out, but somehow is being controlled and stopped. And then you see sort of the Section 6 snipers have arrived. And whether this murder happens or not, and then he sort of tells her that while you can't bear children, the net is still a thing, and that is where our children will go. And then you see that the puppet master sort of knew that they would be coming, so he sort of hacked their system for a moment. And then the puppet master states that there is no turning back. Should you choose to merge, you will no longer be yourself. And then the reason he wanted to choose her is because he feels they resemble each other. And of course, one thing that I should mention again about the differences between the anime series is that the movies do not follow the anime, and the anime does not follow the movie. They're their own separate sort of stories and are unrelated to each other. They're completely different. So if you do go into watching the movies or watching the anime, take them as two totally separate things and completely unrelated. And then finally, Bato gets control. And while the heads explode because Bato's sacrificed there, the Major's head is saved. And Section 9 is now coming in with backup. And Section 6 is just, we've got to get the hell out of here. We did nothing. And because of Bato's sacrifice, by getting in the way of the shot and allowing his arm to be shot, it protected the head. Perhaps not everything is lost, because the brain is still intact, which is the most important thing. Here we enter Bato's home, or safe house. And we see that the Major may be, in fact, still alive. As we see her head on a small child's body. And it kind of looks rather creepy here. It looks like one of those plastic dolls that almost seem alive but aren't. Those frightening things. We see that she is now more a small child rather than a full grown adult. And I'm guessing that's sort of some sort of blood transfusion device. The fact that this was only 20 hours ago is kind of amazing. You think it would take somewhat of a few weeks at least to get to this stage to where the child body was functional to a point. The fact that it takes less than a day is quite the feat. And now there's sort of this question of whether to stay or go, and she chooses to go. And then all of a sudden, the voice sort of regulates back to her adult form. And then you see that they are no longer, they are a completely new entity, completely new person. It's not two people in one body, it's someone completely new. And then they make a promise to meet one day once again, and they have this promise and password now of 2501. And then we close out the film here with no idea of what her plan is, and we get this another shot of a part of the city. And it's quite colorful for what it is. Still sort of this darkness and gloom, but also sort of this nice neon lights coming in, and it looks fantastic. And then the film closes out on that shot, and it was absolutely fantastic. Once again, I thank you for listening to this commentary track and hope you will listen again. I'm sorry for the few mistakes that I've made. Wasn't my intention. And of course, with this version of the film, you get Japanese text. There's no English credits to my knowledge. So I thank you for watching and hope to see you again.